Phil Twyford.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. As my colleague Charles Chauvel has pointed out, Labor voted for this bill at the first reading. We considered it to be, on the face of it, an important initiative, an important development in the government's legislation program, but we are bitterly disappointed with the bill that has come back to this House. We genuinely hoped that the submissions process and select committee scrutiny would strengthen this bill, would give the new authority the tools and the standing that it needs to do the job that it's supposed to do, and New Zealand has been sadly let down. There is, sir, a truth in advertising problem at the heart of this bill. It claims to establish an environmental protection agency, and as my colleague has pointed out, it is an environmental protection agency only in name. Labor has four key concerns about the agency. The first is that the functions of the EPA are far too narrow. It is incapable under this bill, sir, of providing any strong leadership in environment matters, and all it really gets to do under the bill, sir, is manage the fast tracking of consents for major projects and a few other bits and pieces, the registry functions of the climate change response legislation and IRMA's old role under the Hazardous Substances and New Organisms Act. There's a whole lot of missing things that submitters came along to the Select Committee and said should logically be in there. And so we agree with those submissions. For example, the coastal and marine management and environmental management under the exclusive economic zone. The administration of our Antarctic obligations, the administration of an environmental enhancement fund generated by fines issued by district and regional councils, the Waste Minimisation Act, and numerous other functions under the RMA. The second objection we have to this bill, sir, is that the objectives are plainly inadequate. They don't even expressly require the EPA to actually protect the environment. And instead, as currently worded, the objective of the EPA is to undertake its functions in a way that contributes to the effective and transparent management of New Zealand's environment and natural and physical resources, and enables New Zealand to meet its international obligations. Something is missing from this Environmental Protection Agency. Let's play a game of Where's Wally? Let's look for where in this bill we can find any kind of mandate to protect the environment. And sir, if we play that game, we are going to be playing it for a very long time, because we've looked in this bill, sir, and it's not evident to us that protection of the environment is actually what this EPA is all about. The third objection we have, sir, is that the structure and the mandate and the authority of the EPA is so weak. It's not sufficiently independent from the Minister to give it the strength and integrity that it would need if, in fact, it had the real job of protecting the environment. Its independence, if you look at the hazardous substances and new organisms issues role that it's going to inherit from IRMA, in fact, it has less independence from the Minister than IRMA currently has in its administration of those tasks. That's a real concern, and if this government seriously believed in stewardship of New Zealand's natural environment for future generations, then they would have beefed up these provisions and given the EPA the independence and integrity to do that role, free from potential political interference. The fourth concern that we have, sir, is that it's very confusing about the EPA's obligation to take into account its responsibilities to tangata whenua and to take into account Māori perspectives in its decision making. Frankly, we are surprised that the Māori Party has not clearly insisted on the insertion of a treaty clause Every other major piece of environment and conservation legislation, sir, today has a treaty clause that requires the administrators of their legislation to take into account treaty obligations. It's not here. That sends a very confusing message, sir. So when we introduced the Ministry of Environment in 1986, the intent of that move and all the changes that we've seen in the intervening period have been to integrate environmental sustainability into the heart of policy making in this country, that it should sit alongside social and economic objectives and operate in a complementary way, not in a competitive way. What we've seen with this government over the last 2 years and what we see in this legislation is a perspective that sees economic and environmental objectives as competing interests to be balanced or set off against each other. And so that is simply irresponsible to see them as being separate. They are inextricably bound up together, and unless they are taken in an integrated way, policy making in this country will never adequately protect the environment and protect our prosperity together. And instead, sir, when they're set off against each other and seen as separate and competing objectives, we see the kind of policy failures that Charles Chauvel outlined in his speech, a litany of missteps and mishaps by this government on environmental and conservation policy within the last 2 years. I want to come back to the functions of the EPA and just comment in a little bit more detail about the other things that should have been in there. The administration of the Waste Minimisation Act, numerous RMA functions, the coastal and marine management, and the administration of an environmental enhancement fund. We agree that would have amounted to a much more logical and substantial work program for the EPA. Instead, what do we see? Piecemeal transfers of jurisdiction from existing bodies, and it's going to make a legislative dog's breakfast for future policymakers and administrators, let alone the public, trying to come to terms with the effect of these now interlinked pieces of legislation: the Climate Change Response Act, the Resource Management Act, the Hazardous Substances and New Organisms Act. All have to be read in conjunction with the new EPA legislation. That is not the way we should be making laws in this country. Sir, in addition, we've raised concerns, and the Minister has attempted to address them, about the way that future functions will be transferred to the EPA. We are uneasy with what's set out in this bill, sir, because it doesn't contain a bright line test that we can be confident will distinguish between ancillary and substantive functions. And what we fear is that the Minister of the day will make a determination according to a political judgment about what new functions should be transferred or not to the EPA, and that is a real weakness in this law. These flaws, sir, are so fundamental that we worry that it will be impossible for the new EPA to survive as a credible institution charged with managing and protecting the environment for New Zealanders. This is a classic case of a piece of law that should have waited for the Minister to do his work to put the building blocks in place and put in place a new regime that was logical, credible and substantive. Instead, what we see is a new institution, sir, that is insubstantial. There are question marks about its integrity and whether it can in fact carry out the role it's been given, and the worry is that it will be stillborn. There's been some comment already about the fact that the EPA, the objective, doesn't adequately set out the role of environmental protection, and I know my colleagues will have further comments to make about that. Thank you.
Sue